Well, here I am back again, and guess what? All the way from Normandy, here he is. Here's Harry. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning, Keith. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, beautiful sunny day here, and summer finally coming. We've had a miserable couple of months. Rain not every day, but pretty much, and cold, wind. It's just been miserable. But now it seems to be picking up. So finally, we're getting our share of good.
It's not a bad day today, is it? No.
Sure. Mm-hmm. But you've been
Now, Harry,
mm-hmm.
you, strangely enough, we seem to do things in parallel because you ended up in hospital last week, and I was in hospital the week before. And to some extent, it's because we both tumble a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you came out with a startling statistic just a moment ago about the falling and age and how often we do it. I'd like you to repeat that.
Well, falling, I looked into it a little bit more closely because I was rather silly. I turned around too quickly in the garden the other day and fell on the gravel path and cut my head open, which you can see, which was a minor injury compared to what I did to my hand, which required me to go into hospital and have several stitches because it was cut right down to the bone. But there are two elements here. But the first one, to answer your question about falling, I was amazed. I looked it up afterwards out of curiosity, and I find that apparently people after the age of 50 fall at least once a year, after the age of 50, which is young. After the age of 80, you fall several times a year, and it's a very common cause of death. In certain categories of mortal accidents, it's number two. I'm not sure what is number two, but it obviously is a much more serious affair than we think. And of course, it can lead to other injuries, broken bones and what have you. I didn't break any bones, fortunately. But it was a rather a bad fall, and it shook me up, and it took away a lot of my confidence in walking, which I think is also a factor of age. Now, that's the first point that I would like to make. But the second point that I feel very keen to put across is the amazing quality of the health service in France. I was exposed to it firsthand, and they quite amazing. I had the fall. My wife phoned the emergency number. There was an ambulance with three skilled people at the door within 7 minutes. I was immediately treated and carted off to hospital. They were in contact all the time with the hospital people, with the doctors, who said, yes, we want to see him right away, just in case. Since I'd banged my head, I was immediately given a brain scan, and all the rest of me was checked out. And then finally, I was patched up, and I was brought back on the Monday morning of this week for surgery, which was a most amazing experience. I mean, it's Rolls Royce. I mean, waiting times, and so I checked waiting times in the French medical system. There is no hospital waiting time. It is instantaneous. You know, this question of waiting for a bed and all of that sort of stuff, you can schedule in different kinds of operations, obviously, and they'll schedule them in for a certain time in the future. Planning, obviously, they've got surgical planning. But in the case of emergency, it's instantaneous. Health coverage is instantaneous.
Yeah, that is terrific. As my own experience, I've fallen several times, and if I can just give my experience as well, because comparing the practitioners, comparing the doctors and the nurses and the support staff with your experience is fairly similar. The nurses and doctors are terrific.
Exactly.
They're quite wonderful. But the administration, which is really the NHS, is just dreadful. And that's why we've got waiting lists and so on and so forth. And we have a computer system which costs the earth called the Hub, which actually sends you letters reminding you that you've got an appointment at the hospital or at the doctor's the day after you're supposed to have had it.
Oh gosh. No, it's a question of administration. Of course, all systems need administering, and you need a staff to do that. But there is no such structure in the French medical system. The administrative process is part of all of the individual exercises. A hospital, for instance, will have its own administrative staff, but there's no central administrative body. There's no such thing, as far as I can work out, because I've been digging into this to try and find out what's the difference, where the money goes, kind of thing. There's nothing like the NHS in France. It's a series of devolved responsibilities, with each element of the system taking responsibility for what its task is. And so when I was checked into emergency, the doctor and the person checking me in were sitting side by side, one doing the medical work and the other one doing the administrative work. So I'm not aware of an organization. So I looked a little bit deeper to see, what the cost of this system is, and to try and work it out per patient, or to find some comparative measurement with the British system. France does spend overall a little bit more than the NHS does per person per year. I think in Britain it runs about, if I remember the figures, about £3,800 per person, and France spends 4,000, a little over 4,000, so it's slightly more. But virtually, I would think, from what I can understand in analyzing the process, is that at least 80-90% of it is going into frontline medicine. It's not going into admin. You've got to be checked in. You've got all the rest of it, that sort of stuff. But there is no big body behind that's administering it. The actual financial side is handled by a semi-private insurance organization, which is, when I say semi-private, it's run as a private organization, but it's not for profit. They're not designed to make a profit. It's simply a service which has been farmed out to these people. And your basic coverage, which is paid for in your taxes, costs you about, I think, 7% is the amount taken off your taxes for your health care, and that covers you virtually for everything. If you need special treatment for issues, you can take out a supplementary insurance for the remaining 30%, and you can pay whatever you want to pay for that. It's not expensive. Yeah. It's a little bit extra. I think I pay maybe about, I have to look this up, but about maybe £150 a quarter. And that gives me covered for everything that could ever possibly happen to me.
Well, you can go private in Britain, of course, but it's much more expensive than £150 a quarter. But my own experience,
£150 a quarter is a top up on your basic 70% coverage under the under your tax system. Yeah.
Well, when you go private, you more or less opt out of the NHS, and you pay for everything yourself. So it is a very expensive option. But under the, I mean, let's say the NHS system as opposed to the NHS, because the NHS is a complete and utter disaster. But actually, strangely enough, the last time I was in hospital was not because I fell, but I woke up in the middle of the night with three separate, very, very severe pains. One in the rib cage, one in the neck, and one in the upper arm. And because I'm now on my own, having lost Valerie, 10 years ago now, but I live in a rather pleasant flat, but it's sheltered. In other words, I have a little rope hanging from the ceiling, and if I'm really, really dire circumstances, I pull it, and it goes through to what's called a lifeline. And very nice ladies there, and you have a nice chat. But it was 3 o'clock in the morning, Friday, Saturday morning. I had a quick chat, and they asked me for various symptoms, and they said, "We'll get an ambulance to you." They came back within 5 minutes and said, "An ambulance will arrive, but it's going to be about 2 hours because we're very busy. Are you able to handle that 2 hours?" And I said, "Yes, I am." They arrived. They were young. They had their equipment with them. They took my blood pressure. They took my heartbeat. They took all sorts of things. They had a little chat, and they said, your vital signs seem to be okay, but we would recommend that you go to hospital." So I said, "Well, I'm not going to ask for expert advice and ignore it. So I'll go to hospital." So they bundled me into the back of the ambulance, and it's about 30 minutes to the hospital. And I had a delightful chat with this young lady who wanted to know about me. And as a matter of fact, she wanted to know about you too, because when you get me talking, of course, as I talk of nothing except Mirador. And I was saying that we got a colleague that I'd known for about 60 years, and he broadcasts from France, and so on, and they were fascinated. Anyway, they got me into hospital in Haywards Heath, which is not very far away. And I was seen immediately. I was checked with blood and heart and so on and so forth. And then over a period of about 2 or 3 hours, it was tested for absolutely everything. And the leaders of the group was a very, very attractive nurse. I would say that she was about 40, called Ash, and a doctor who was about the same age called Justin. And you would have thought, Harry, that I had just written them individually a check, because they really were very solicitous and really looked after me. And I got home at about 6 o'clock that night, having been taken back again in an ambulance with another different group, but youngsters who also wanted to chat to me, and they wanted to know about my experiences around the world and so on and so forth. And I thought, Sunday morning, I think I'm going to fall down again and go back to hospital. Such a nice. So that side of things is fine. I then on Monday morning had to deal with an administrator, a job's worth, and I lost all my enthusiasm for the service again, because they all they wanted to do was to say, we wanted to take a note of your income, because we want to see how much we can charge you if we have to charge you. And I thought, hang on, what about me breaking my neck? They're not a bit interested in that. So those are the two contrasts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but a question that I'd like to ask, because I still can't find out the answer, is this huge administrative side to the NHS. What does it do? We hear talks about they've got huge departments on equality and diversity and all sorts of strange social endeavors which have relatively little to do with medicine and with health. Where is all the money going? It's not going. Doesn't seem to be going into the front line.
Well, of course, it's something that you highlighted that generally speaking has blighted British services. It part of it goes on huge salaries for the administrators. I mean, the hospital managers and the consultants and so on and so forth all get huge amounts of money, huge amounts of money. And I suppose, really, I hadn't thought about it until this very moment, but our junior doctors are consistently going on strike for more money. And of course, there's not much sympathy for them. Is how can doctors go on strike? What about the Hippocratic Oath and so on? But I can understand that here they are, the frontline people, whom I find very efficient and so on, making a fifth of what the bloke is making sitting in an office somewhere, ordering the light bulb.
Well, I can understand that, and I think that the trainee doctors are on very poor salaries and working unbelievable hours, and so I can quite understand why they feel after all those years of study and that they should be better remunerated than they are. So I can fully understand that. The moral question of a doctor going on strike when health is involved is a tough one to handle. But if they've forced into a corner, that's perhaps the only means they've got of making their case. But I go back to my main point is that what is there to administer in the sense of that you need super paid salaries for top executives in the hospital system? We have in Normandy a cancer center in Caen, which is one of the big cities in Normandy, about 90 kilometers from where I live. We have a cancer center. It's the Backless Cancer Center, where my wife was treated exceptionally well. And the head of the hospital is a doctor. It's not some guy that's on a, well, he's on a probably damn good salary because he's one of the top cancer specialists in the world. And that's where President Mitterrand, when he was alive, was treated. And many other famous people come from all over the world to be treated there. But it's run by doctors. There will be people in charge of sending out the letters, the bills, or paying the rent of the building, or whatever you do to administer any entity. But there is no structure, an administrative structure that is not immediately directed at supporting frontline care. It has no other obligations to decide whether they've got the right number of immigrant doctors or this or that. If they've got a good doctor, they don't care where he comes from. And we have a slightly higher percentage of doctors per person in France than you do in England. I think we've got 3.3 doctors per 1,000 population. In France, you've got in England, you've got 2.8, which is slightly less. And there's an enormous percentage of immigrant doctors I see when I look at the figures for Britain. Yes. One in 3 doctors is an immigrant doctor. 1 in 4 nurses in Britain are immigrant nurses. So does that mean that Britain isn't training enough people itself? In France?
Well, yes and no, but the administrative requirements call for large numbers of people. Good morning, Philip.
Yeah, good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Harry, your beauty has been marred.
Oh, yes. Well, nothing to worry. they gave me a brain scan, and they didn't find anything. I don't think they even found a brain.
Well, that's a very funny quip, but I don't think that's the case with you.
Mm-hmm.
What on earth happened? Obviously, you had a fall, did you?
Yes, fell in the garden, being silly, just because I walk fairly steadily now at my age with a cane, and I turned around too quickly and fell over, lost my balance, and lost my sense of direction, and I wasn't able to determine how I was falling, and I scraped my head along the gravel path and made a bit of a mess of myself. But anyway,
Oh, that's horrible.
yeah.
Oh, on a gravel path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did they have to pick out bits of gravel from the wound and everything?
They actually did, yes. Well, I had to pick it out, but I think to Keith, the incredible speed of reaction. I mean, my wife called the ambulance, emergency services, and the ambulance was there within 7 minutes, with 3 skilled people on board, and communicating with the hospital all the time. They whisked me off to hospital for preliminary treatment. The second I got there, I was seen by a doctor. I was seen by a doctor as I entered the emergency room, as I walked in.
That's extraordinary.
As I was carried in, actually, they put me in, insisted on putting me in a chair. But amazing. And I had a brain scan within 20 minutes, half an hour max, I would think.
This is extraordinary. But do you pay for this by way of insurance or something?
In France, you covered 70% of your medical needs, which are all basic medical needs. It's pretty much everything you need, by a deduction from your pay slip. I think it amounts to about 7% of your pay.
Right.
And then if you want to take private insurance, well, semi-private insurance, I'll come back to that point in a minute, you can top up the remaining 30%, which would cover you if you wanted, beautiful single hospital beds and all the rest of it. But the 30%, the insurance structure for that is semi-private. It's run as a private organization, but it's a non-profit organization, and it pays for itself. And it's simply the government says we're not skilled enough to run that. We'll put it into private hands. I guess there might be a marginal rewards because people can invest in those enterprises, but essentially it's not just to milk the client, it's just to try and spread the insurance costs so that you're covered for the balance. And once you've got your private insurance, your top up, not private insurance total, just the top up for the remaining 30%, you've got a Rolls Royce service. There's nothing, a hospital room which might cost $1,000 a night is free. It's everything. Everything is free.
I knew that the friend of mine who lives down the road, who, like Keith, now has Parkinson's. He actually was on holiday in France years ago when he had a really serious stroke. And he was in a French hospital for nearly 2 years. And he waxes absolutely lyrical about the treatment he received. Because they quite simply saved his life. I mean, and he operates on that level perfectly normally, and then sadly he got Parkinson's as well. So I knew that the standard of care in France, with that example, was extremely high. But you also are telling us, describing to us, a simply enviable, by British standards, an enviable health service.
Well, it is. And the question is, I was saying to Keith earlier, I think it costs slightly more per head than is spent in Britain. The difference between about 3,800 per year per person I think it goes to about 41 or 4,200 per person. But virtually all of that money is going into frontline medicine. It's not going into administrative. Each
No.
element, each hospital has its own administrative staff, to do all the paperwork, but they are subordinate to the doctors. The head of most of these hospitals is a doctor. It's not some guy with a big salary obliged to apply all sorts of modern woke principles such as diversity and equality and inclusion and you name it. I mean, there's none of that nonsense as far as I can see, and there's a very high percentage of what I would call homegrown doctors. Under the French medical system, there is about 10% are doctors who were born elsewhere other than France. In Britain, I read the figures, it's 1 in 3 doctors come from somewhere else. As if that Britain isn't producing enough doctors. Figure for nurses is 1 in 4 nurses in Britain comes from somewhere else.
Yes, I'm not surprised about that. There is
it
that.
doesn't mean that they're not good, and it doesn't mean that they don't care. But is Britain not producing the necessary means of looking after itself? That we have to bring in people from somewhere else, and perhaps in doing so, denuding those countries from the medical care that their citizens would have been given by their people directly. I mean, isn't that a reverse colonization of some sort? I'm not sure.
It probably is. I mean, I heard on the radio here this morning, Keith may have heard it as well or read about it, the British Medical Association, they are now complaining that despite the fact that you wait for years to get a GP's appointment, there is in fact a surplus of doctors who could be GPs who are effectively out of work, which I find quite extraordinary that they've gone public with this. Did you read about that in the papers, Keith?
No, I haven't seen that yet, but it surprises me a little bit. But the fact is, of course, is over the last little while, I think one of the problems is that doctors have become a job rather than a vocation. The surgery is open from 9 until 5. It's not open on Saturday. You don't get house visits. It's become, and that's why I think it's become unionized. And the moment that you actually get to that situation and that structure in any business, of course, you get surplus people. You get people who even though it would benefit the sector to have them work in it, is they either can't or won't.
Yeah, that may explain it, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. And you're absolutely right about the shrinkage of what's available to us as patients, potential patients. I mean, it's like working, shop hours, 9 till 5. And even then, you'll find our surgery has on one particular day, it closes down for 2 hours in the mid-afternoon for what it calls training. What the hell are they doing for 2 hours? Training who? I mean, for what? I mean, it's just ridiculous. But your point about the nurses, Harry, it reminds me of when the Duke of Edinburgh was alive, and he did some visit round some hospitals, a royal visit, not for health reasons. And in typical fashion, he made the remark very loudly, is there anybody left in the Philippines, or are they all working here? Which at the time was hilarious, frankly. But that was the Duke of Edinburgh. But he was just completely overwhelmed by how many, in that instance, Filipino nurses there were working in the hospitals he was visiting. He not being on the National Health, of course, but
well, you've just answered a question for me. I now know what these thousands or tens of thousands of administrative staff do in the NHS. They make sure they creep around and ensure that nobody makes racist remarks like that.
quite so.
About Philippines. I mean,
if it had have happened yesterday, he would have been asked to leave.
Absolutely. I mean,
sorry, Your Royal Highness, out.
Yeah.
You know,
no, I mean, it's
we are the PC police.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the leaflet that came through my door yesterday, which is very different to the one I scanned to you, but it was for reform. Again, not unimpressive, very persuasive. But Farage is calling this election the immigration election now. And he's banging a drum very loudly about non-essential immigration being stopped, as well as the boats. Quite how they're going to manage that, I don't know. They're not going to be in power, that's for sure. But and did you have a look at the link I sent you, Harry, of Keith interviewing the Reform candidate in Lewis?
No, there's one thing that I did. I couldn't open it, though. That was a problem then. I couldn't open that one.
Really?
I was meaning to get back to you too, because that would sound very interesting. It sounds I'd love to see that, but I did try to open it and I couldn't.
Well, I'll try. I'll send it you again. It's
yeah,
from the archives. It's from what we call the library.
My own lack of technical skill, perhaps, you know.
No, it's not you. The link. Look, I'll try again, Harry. I'll try again later on.
I wonder if I could, while we're on this this theme, is linked to, in my view, some of the problems with the NHS, but also the situation that the Tories find themselves in, where they look as if they're going to be almost wiped out, is this business of political correctness, which goes right through our society. Do you think that is directly related to the situation that the Tories find themselves in as much as they use ratios in putting up candidates? I mean, good candidates were told that they couldn't stand in a riding because it had to have a lady, or it had to have a homosexual, or it had to have a black. And that as a consequence, they forgot to get people of worth. And that's why they got themselves into such a dreadful, dreadful situation. And people now see them as worthless, and that they are worthless because they were choosing people not fit for purpose.
Well, that's entirely possible. When you've got organizations like the NHS, which are beholden to government, they don't have, from what I can see, they're not independent as to fulfilling their primary obligations. They have to do it within a context which is parameters set by government, and so whatever the philosophy of the current government is, it's going to be reflected in the way they do business. So yeah, I can see how that has pervaded the system, but it's pervaded all parts of life. And I think what enormous guilt has to go to the Conservative, Parliamentary Conservative Party, absolutely useless people like Cameron and others that were pulled the party to the left, became more liberal Democrats than anything, and that's the mess that Sunak and people have inherited, and they haven't done anything to change it. So by golly, they're going to go to the left now. The nation's going to go to the left. very, very soon. But I think we have to blame all this woke policy is coming from the Conservatives. They had an opportunity to break free from Europe. Brexit was approved, then they did nothing about it, and we're still subservient to the European Court of Human Rights. And you're not going to do anything about immigration until you get out of that mess.
Well, Farage just realised that, because that's another of his policies, to get out of the obligation, for want of a better word, of the ECHR. I think I've said before, it was precisely that persuaded me to vote for Brexit as a lawyer then. And nothing's happened.
No.
Absolutely nothing has happened.
But to blame that on the Conservatives. And, turned out to be, well, they turned out not to be Conservatives. There are a few Conservatives left, the Brahmans, the Rees-Moggs, and one or two others, but the rest of them are not Conservatives, not in 1,000 years. They're a bunch of wits, and it's a sickness that had to be carved out of the British body politic. And unfortunately, that weakened body will now be susceptible to all of the incredible diseases that are represented by this influx of extreme.
Incidentally, it shows how the political class really are not paying any attention to the electorate. I don't know whether you've seen it this morning, but there is a statement by Keir Starmer that Corbyn would have made a much better prime minister than Boris Johnson.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Corbyn, who wanted to, I don't know, he wanted to welcome Hamas to the British Parliament and things like this. I mean, and then people see through that, but they're so frustrated by the failure of the Conservatives that they're going to vote for that kind of thing. There's no difference between Starmer and Corbyn. Starmer is just Corbyn with a mask on.
You really think that? You think Starmer is a Corbynite?
Oh, absolutely. I think they're all Corbynites.
Yes, I agree with you, Harry, and I think that once a particular group manage to take over a political organization, is they don't let go terribly easily, and they are quite good at being chameleons, just simply to hang on until
Absolutely.
such time as their day comes again.
That's true. Your ratio point, Keith, looking at the images on TV or in newspapers of the Tory benches in the Commons, if there are ratios in place for candidates, they haven't worked, because to me, it is majority male, exclusively white. Obviously, I don't know their sexuality, but it's failed with the MPs that are actually sitting there. That they just look, the only person who stands out is Sunak, as did Braverman, because of the colour of his skin.
Yes.
The rest of them are just the same grey-faced John Majors that we're used to, with a few sort of robust females.
I'd like to return to this in a minute, Philip, but we are joined by Mr. Pixie himself, but who also recently had experience of the NHS. And we've just been talking, Mark, because Harry was subject to the French system, and we were comparing it. And I wonder what your experience was with your recent illness.
Yeah, Harry, you look like you've been in the wars there by that head.
I did. I fell over in the garden and made a mess of myself. But there you go. But it's my own fault. Silly old me. And I hadn't even been drinking. I mean, it was,
Oh, so I was going to say, I normally do that after the second bottle of red wine.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to say that my experience was until I got to the hospital absolutely awful. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and I sort of left it a bit, and then I couldn't go to the loo. I was bursting at 2:00 in the morning. My wife called an ambulance, and 5 hours later, no one had turned up. So she drove me to A&E. I was trundled. I was sat in A&E in absolute agony, and then taken on a chair to sit in a corridor for another couple of hours. It was shocking, and in fact, at 2:00 in the morning, it was absolutely packed. This is good old Stoke, Harry, the epicenter of the world. It was full of drunks, dust heads. It was absolutely shocking, and some of them were actually getting seen before me, particularly a couple of these guys that were just off their heads. However, after saying all that, once I did get into the hospital, the service was second to none. The nurses, the doctors were absolutely outstanding. But it's just that time, and I've got friends that are waiting for hip replacements and things like that. 2 years, 3 years on. One of my good friends, he's been waiting 2.5 years for a hip replacement. And the sad thing with some of that is it almost gets to the exact day that he's going in, and then they cancel it. And it's shocking. Another friend of mine, she's got a cyst on her kidney, and obviously is really worried that it might be cancer, etc. That's been delayed 3 times now. So it's the constant bit. So yeah, I think it's broken. Something seriously needs to happen.
Tell him, Harry, tell the professor exactly how long you had to wait for the ambulance.
Well, from the time that my wife called emergency, the ambulance was there in 7 minutes. And
then make him feel even worse by telling him as you did us.
And even while they were cleaning me up, because I was blood all over. I really looked far worse than I was. They were on the telephone coordinating with the hospital, and some doctor, not an administrative person, doctors run the hospitals in France. Was giving them guidance and said, yes, we'd like to see him. If his head was involved, he hit his head. Yes, okay, we'll get him in. I had a brain scan within 20 minutes of getting into the hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
And entering to hospital in France is instantaneous. There is no such thing as a waiting list. You can schedule operations. If you've got major operations, obviously they have to program them. They can't put them all in the operating room at once. So they say, yeah, we'll schedule you for next month or maybe a little bit down the line, depending on the urgency. But in terms of immediate care, if you need immediate care, it's instant.
That's absolutely
Harry, you will appreciate my assessment because my view is coloured by how cute the nurses in the hospital and the ambulance staff are, and boy, are they cute.
Well, I have to say the same thing. I was fortunate having a very attractive lady nurse when I went in for my surgery on the hand. And she looked after me amazingly. But even the tea lady, the lady that brought after the operation, brought a meal, and I was able to choose what I wanted from a long list of goodies, and quite amazing.
Yeah. Can we change the subject now? Because I'm getting really jealous.
Yes, so am I. Harry, can I come and stay for a couple of years?
Yes, well, now here's the bad news. Here's the bad news.
Oh,
We've been
don't ruin it, Harry.
we've been talking about the fact that we're going to have probably 10 or 20 years of socialism imposed on England coming up, and they'll change the rules so that it will perpetuate their presence in high places, which is natural. It's the political game. That's how it's played. But it is much, much worse. The threat is much stronger in France with the upcoming parliamentary elections in France. We've got a right-wing party finally coming to the fore. But to compete with that, there's been a coalition formed by the left wing, all the left-wing parties coming together to try and keep out the right wing. And this left-wing party, which is called a Front Populaire, they've all come together. They're proposing some things that would make Corbyn look like a Christian. How about emptying the prisons? Everybody out.
Emptying the prisons.
Emptying the prisons. Everybody out. You shouldn't be in prison. It's unnatural that people should be locked up and deprived of their freedom. Go and go and knife people if you want in the street and have a good time. Don't knife me, but you can, as long as you knife somebody else and what have you. And drugs. Oh yes. Well, they'll be on the national health. Drugs. Everybody can get as much cocaine as you want, and the taxpayer will pay for it. And wealthy people, nobody should have any wealth of any kind. I mean, wealth is obscene, and therefore all people should be stripped of wealth. I mean, it's make people like Trotsky look like they're angels. I mean, so even though we're in for this very strange period of governance in Britain under these Corbynistas, and yes, I come back to my point I made a few minutes ago. They're all Corbynistas. They're all doctrinaire, ideological, left-wing thinkers. You take from the rich to give to the poor, and there are more poor than there are rich. So for a period of time, they'll all vote for you until there's no more money left in the pot, and then there'll be a swing to the right again. But we will go through a period of milking the rich. Taxation will go through the roof, but it'll be hidden taxation. It won't necessarily be done by income tax or by what have you. It'll be means of just making sure that all transactions have a percentage taken by the state, which will discourage transactions being made. I think
we already have VAT. You have an IVA over there, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, Farage is adamant that reform, if in power, which they're not going to be, of course, mandatory determinate sentences for violent and drugs offences, including the possibility of life. So nothing could be further removed from the communista agenda you're describing.
No.
But what are the chances of anybody of that ilk getting in France?
Well, they're running in the polls at the moment at roughly 25%, and the right-wing party is running at about 35%. Now, under the
two-stage
system that we have in France, the smaller parties that make up the difference will be eliminated, and then the final match will be between these two sides, which, if those proportions remain solid, it will mean that the right-wing government will get in. But in the event that it didn't, well, it's a possibility. I think it's a remote possibility, quite frankly, for two reasons. I don't think France is ready for that. There is a move to the right generally. In Europe, right throughout Europe, there's a move to the right. Which contrasts with what's happening in Britain. And also, I don't think that the left-wing coalition in France will hold together strong enough, because they're starting fighting amongst themselves already. There's some real nutcases in that group. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, that's enough about the Tories. Now, who are you talking about now, Harry?
I'm talking about the Front Populaire, this coalition of left-wing parties that have come together, that are already squabbling amongst themselves. But if they could hold together, and they all would hold together if they were prepared, if their purpose in life is to prevent the right wing getting in, that would keep them together. And I don't know. And then it depends on the president. The president is the one who calls upon whoever wins the parliamentary election to form a government, and he may not necessarily choose the right wing. He could choose the left wing, even if they came in second. It's unusual, but he could. He has the prerogative to do that.
Well, earlier in the week, some friends of mine of many years here in Arundel, they introduced me to a guest of theirs, a lady called Renata from Munich. Typically perfect English, probably better English than me. But we were talking about, somehow D-Day got mentioned and whatever, and she expressed her concern. She's obviously somebody like you, Harry, who keeps very much on top of things. And she was saying that the Germans themselves are worried about the right wing, Europe-wise, coming back, and how do you put it here? We're just not learning the lessons of the past. So she mentioned Poland, she mentioned Hungary, she mentioned Germany, she mentioned France, and she mentioned Italy. What do you know about Italian politics, Harry?
Well, the Brothers of Italy party, which is currently the ruling party, and Giorgia Meloni, who's she's a kid from the rough end of town, but from a very early age, she got involved in politics. She's self-taught, and I really mean self-taught. She's never been near a university, but she speaks 2 or 3 languages well, and she learned them just from her iPhone. I mean, that's the kind of person you've got. And why can she speak? I mean, I beg you to, once this program is over, to switch on a YouTube speech by Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister. Whether you understand the Italian or not, if you can get one with subtitles, and she would make Mussolini look like a child. I mean, you know, he was the great orator, you know, and all the gestures. She puts him to shame, and you know, she says she's shouting at the crowd. You know, she says, "I am a woman. I am a mother. I am Italian. I am a Christian. Nobody will take that away from me." And I mean, it's inspiring. I mean, you even feel you should be.
Harry, calm down. Calm down.
You should be standing up to.
I can see your blood pressure rising.
You see the veins going ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum.
You've got a head injury, Harry.
Yeah, but watch Giorgia Meloni, and that'll answer your questions. I mean, she's inspiring a whole nation. Now, funnily enough, she got in. Brothers of Italy party is certainly a right-wing party, but it is actually being very modest and very mild. It's moving a little bit towards the center ground to try and get everybody on board. Very astute political maneuvering here on her part. So there's the thing. Italy, yes, right wing, but moving back towards the center a little bit.
Right. So the party called the Brothers of Italy is actually headed by a woman.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very Irish, if I may say so.
Well,
But there we go.
maybe she's the only Italian politician with balls. For all
Well, no,
Yeah.
it sounds like she is. It sounds like she
Anyway,
is.
that covers Italy. But what's happening in France is well known. We've got the Rassemblement National, which is now the polling and ahead in the polls, very likely to form the next government. But it too has moved to the centre ground. When it was the Front National with Jean-Marie Le Pen in charge, it was pretty right wing. It was built on what was left of the fascist supporters during World War II. But when her daughter took over, she excluded her father and she brought it into the centre ground. It's become more of the Workers' Party. It's very much like Farage Party in many ways, like Reform, but it's moved to the centre, but it's just got common sense policies. So there's a very good chance that it will get elected and will become the next French government.
Interesting.
We've seen that happening out in Holland with Geert Wilders. They've moved. He is certainly right wing, and he's putting together a government to govern Holland. In Germany, we have the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, for Germany party, which is definitely right wing. They are still unlikely to form a government, and under the German post-war constitution, which was imposed on them by the Americans, it's doubtful if they could, but they could very much become part of a coalition government and move Germany to the right in the next 4 or 5 years. Germany has been particularly to the left since World War II.
That's what fascinated me about this lady's remarks, because I actually do listen to you, Harry, unlike people like Keith, who just goes to sleep. You've always led me to believe that, well, you said that Germany is left wing and would probably welcome Putin invading it or something, but you always said it was left wing. So,
well, it has been left wing pretty much since the war, and the danger being it was dominated by the Greens for so long.
Hello.
Carry on, please. Hello, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm on the station at Angmering, and I've got first Littlehampton, then I've got second Littlehampton, third is the Southampton, which is 10:43.
That's right.
Yes.
Is there not a 23?
No, there's a 22 to Littlehampton only.
Right.
And then there's the second one's Littlehampton.
Would you mind getting the Southampton?
No, that's fine. So it's 10:43 Southampton.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, love. Bye.
All right, bye.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Phil.
Sorry about that. That was my missus ringing me for a lift.
Ah.
Oh, quite right too.
Yes, well, I'm just a flipping taxi service.
What retirement does to you, Phil?
Sorry, I had to act as doorman again, otherwise there'd have been no beer in the pub today. I think this is a fascinating discussion, and I'd like to return to it, perhaps when Melissa is here. But I wonder, Mark, you've been a wee bit poorly, and I wonder if you could give us an update on one of the things that Mirador is involved in, and that is the University of Innovation, which in itself is quite remarkable and quite unique.
Yes, it's moving apace now. Actually, I've got a meeting with the Department for Education next week, and all the it's like all universities. It still has to go through the bureaucratic process, but the concept's been really well received. Perhaps if you know, Harry, we were putting together a new university that isn't a traditional one where everyone sits in lecture theatres and are talked at, but one that's very much around workshops and work-based activity, more like the old-fashioned apprenticeships, really. And the Conservatives have introduced degree apprenticeships, so it's really building on that. We'll get experts coming in to talk to the students, but the students will spend most probably 60% of their time in the workplace and only 40% of their time in the institution. And they'll say it will be workshops, seminars, those sorts of things, rather than the very formal system. There will be no exams. There will be just one qualification, which will be innovation, and it might be around management. We've got a massive thing happening over here, Harry, which I'm sure you perhaps have called esports. Have you heard of that, Harry? It's massive here and in the States, and particularly in places like China. And it's where young people, particularly, instead of playing games against a computer, play against each other. They can be playing against somebody in China, Australia, and they play against each other.
Oh, I think I've heard of that. Yeah, but I don't know anything about it really.
It's massive, but quite a lot of it that the university involved is sort of event management, because quite a lot of it is around events and managing events, etc. So we've been approached by the British Esports Association to set something up around that. So we're hoping that we can start our first cohort in September as a trial up in Manchester, and then certainly but the hope is that by Christmas we'll perhaps have our first satellite down in Lewes. And we'll basically have a hub in Manchester with satellites in different parts of the country coming together. So that's the plan. And as I say, the next hub we hope will be with you down there in Lewes, Keith.
Excellent. I will warn you, Mark. I've already asked Harry if he could have a summer school in his town in Normandy.
Beautiful. Couldn't be better. I'll lead it.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got to interrupt, guys, for a sec, because one thing I didn't mention to you about the medical system is that now that I'm back home, I have a nurse come to see me every day if necessary. In fact, at the moment, because it's not too serious, every 2 days, comes in and changes my dressing at the house.
My God.
Is she cute?
Is she cute? Exactly.
She was yesterday. Apparently, it's a guy coming in today. I'll find out if he's cute.
That'll get your blood pressure up, Harry.
But
do you know what? It's absolutely amazing that you say that, because my neighbour opposite, who's in his 80s, is in last sort of stages of lung cancer. And he has social care people that come in 2 or 3 times a day, but his wife's 83, and on average they have a palliative nurse who comes to stay overnight because she's bad at nights. But for the past 3 days, the nurses have been on holiday. There's only 2 nurses for the whole of Stoke-on-Trent, so the daughters had to live there. It's shocking, really, compared to what you get.
Well, this is absolutely and these are very highly trained people. They what I guess are known as country nurses or what have you, but they do the external care after you've had hospital treatment, and they bring their box of goodies and open it up and take all my stitches out or don't know. Sorry, they will do eventually take the stitches out, but every day they just check that everything is on track and change the dressing. And it's all done, all free at home. Don't even have to go out to do it.
What time is she coming in today, Harry?
They were called district nurses.
I'm watching through the window to see if, and she'll ring the bell, of course, to come in, and Jacqueline will go down and let her in. So So should it be
Okay,
any
well, hang
time?
on as long as you can, because Melissa should be on the way.
Mhm.
She normally starts to make contact with us about 10:30.
Yeah.
It would be nice to get us all back together again after the fractured
Mhm.
appearances of the past week. But yeah, you're right, aren't you, Mark? It's astonishing that we have such a paucity of that
Mm.
sort of care.
Mm. And you
Well,
think,
it
you think
used
of
to
all
be
the
district
years.
nurses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's the same with postnatal care. I mean, when my daughter was born, and very shortly afterwards, I was on that damn case in Wales that lasted forever. My wife Jackie says even now that she only got through that time with Jess as a very young baby because of the district nurse, but they don't exist anymore.
No.
Just on a slightly similar subject, on Tuesday of this week, I went to the funeral of our friend and neighbour, a lady called Paula, who had a long struggle with cancer. She was in a hospice for a while, and then we think because of her wishes, she was moved back home. And when it is cancer, you do get hospice nurses and paramedics checking you out on a daily basis. Well, what I learned from her son at the funeral was that she was a teacher. All her life, she was a teacher. And she rose to the level of deputy head of an excellent Catholic school in Worthing called Our Lady of Zion. And I know it's excellent because my son Charlie, thanks to her, was admitted to that school for 2 years, and it saved him because he had an absolutely rubbish experience in the state schools. He was bullied very, very badly and got no help at all from the school. Anyway, so Paula had taught all over the place, but predominantly in Worthing. Well, the night before she died, she was visited by a paramedic, a mature man, and a young hospice nurse. And they realized that the lady they were looking after, she had been their teacher,
Yeah.
totally different generations, but she had taught both of them biology. And her son said, you know, they were much, much moved by knowing that this lady who had taught them so well was, as it happened, about to pass away. But I just thought I'd share that because I think it's quite an incredible coincidence, really.
Nice story. Yes, very interesting. Yeah.
Lovely.
Ah, there we go. That's right here. So I'm going to have to go and get checked now. So
Bye-bye.
If you can come back, Harry,
Is it a man
do.
or a woman?
I don't think I'll. No, it takes about. Oh, no, she's at the gate there. So it'll be about 10 minutes, I would think. But no, I wouldn't make it back because I've got another engagement after that. So.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I see. So you're taking the nurse out for lunch then?
Today. Catch up with you on Monday.
Indeed.
Okay, then. God bless you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, my other bit of experience, as Phil, has been that when my mum passed away in November, and she had the most brilliant care. She didn't have cancer. She just sort of. She was 94. She had a beautiful life. We went out for lunch on her birthday on the 21st of October, and she asked me to see various friends that I got to see, and then she just decided that she'd had enough.
Yeah.
And she passed away in her home very happily. But all of the care staff that were absolutely wonderful weren't British. They were from Africa, from the Far East, etc. So it was interesting. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, how are you?
Lovely to see you.
Good to see you too. Hello, Phil. Hi, Keith.
Hi, darling. Harry just had to leave. Otherwise, you'd had 4 men who were in love with you.
Ooh. Wow. That sounds great. Thank
No,
you
the
all.
reason
Thank
he
you
had to
all
leave
for
was
all
that-
the love.
The reason he had to leave by choice was because his beauty has been marred by the fact that he fell over recently, lost his balance on a gravel path, and he's understating it, but it was obviously quite a serious wound because he was taken into hospital. And we're all very jealous about the treatment he got, because in France, compared with the British National Health Service, they're treated very well. His ambulance turned up in, what was it, Keith, 6 minutes?
Yes.
The paramedics, as we would call them, were in constant contact with the hospital because it was a head injury for an elderly person. He was met by a doctor literally at the door of the hospital.
Wow.
And he was having a CT scan within 20 minutes.
Wow. That's amazing.
Now, given the dreadful story that the Professor maybe has related to us this morning about when he had to be taken in by his wife, not an ambulance because it didn't turn up, when his prostate cancer became very acute, and how he had to wait for hours on a trolley, etc., etc. The contrast could not be more stark.
Wow.
Very, very difficult.
So when is it? So, well, I mean, so I'm in America. We don't have a healthcare system.
Well, you do. You have to pay for it, but you do.
Yeah, you pay for it quite dearly. I paid, there's another healthcare story. My son went to have just routine blood work, right? You know, what's your cholesterol? What's this? He's 26. Who cares? But they give it to you. And then he also had, he thought maybe he had COVID. So 2 test results cost me almost $1,000. And I already pay for insurance, $500 every month.
Good grief.
You had to pay $1,000 on top of what you already pay.
Yes.
Good grief.
Good God.
And we went to, so this is an interesting thing. So we have these little things called urgent care centers, because, a lot of people, they're thinking, well, I don't want to go to the hospital. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of extra money on top of the insurance. These urgent centers are all affiliated with the hospital. So you get hospital charges. And it's just a little center. It's not a hospital.
Excuse me.
Bless you. It's a scam. The whole thing is a scam. It's just insane. I can't even get over it. Like, if I had to pay out of pocket, I would have a big problem. Really. Like $1 million for cancer treatment.
Wow.
$1 million. Good God.
Yeah, it would bankrupt anybody. And so in that respect, like, when I talk about debt and things like that, because, I'm very debt averse, that and maybe a small mortgage would be the only things I would say, okay, we're okay on the debt. Because it's medical. Here, that's understandable that a lot of people would have medical debt. There, you wouldn't have medical debt, which to us would blow our minds that we would never have medical debt.
No, I've met Americans over here in the UK who have always raised the subject of the NHS. Always.
Oh, sorry, there's a bug.
They
Hi.
Bye.
bugs. Who needs them?
Thanks.
But now, Americans have expressed to me in passing, it's something very much on their mind when they're over here about the wonderful national health system. It is wonderful. And as Mark will tell you, as he told us, once he was being seen to, he can't fault them.
Right. Beautiful.
But getting in,
Yeah.
in stark contrast to Harry Atherton's experience, it's getting in that's the problem.
Right. I'll just, maybe I'll relate. Yeah, we pay. And my father had, my father, when he was alive, he had Medicare, which is health insurance for the elderly.
Yeah.
And I think he paid $150 a month.
Right.
And he brought in his national pension maybe $1,100 a month, nothing. So, but anyway, the ambulance came within moments. When I called the ambulance, when he fell for the last time, and he was dying, they came immediately, and the police even came. So the response is very good when you need it. But okay, let's talk. It cost $800 for an ambulance.
Good grief. Yeah.
Good God.
You have to make a lot of money to survive in the United States.
Yeah.
You have
absolutely.
to be very resourceful and make a lot of money to survive here. Seriously. It is, well, I don't know if it's completely free, because of course there's regulation. Thank God it's not completely free. I was reading about Milton Friedman, one of our old economists, free market. He didn't live through the mortgage debacle in 2008.
So much for his advice, yeah. So taking a thankfully still living example, i.e. Mark Maybe, had he been in America as an American citizen for the obviously very intense treatment he has had for prostate cancer, he may have had to pay $1 million.
If he didn't have insurance, yes.
Extraordinary.
So, during the Obama administration, there was an attempt to try to bridge that gap between those who don't have insurance.
I remember that. Yeah.
And they didn't actually go all the way with it, which would have been to do a government system like you have. There was a lot of resistance by the conservatives. They didn't want that. They're all free market idiots, because no extreme works. Sorry, guys. We're humans. Extremes just don't work. So anyway, so what happened was, so now it's tied to insurance companies. So it's a subsidiary to the insurance companies, and then you get to have insurance.
Yeah.
But it's still expensive. It's still like probably be, for me, it might be over $1,000 a month instead of the $500 through employer insurance. So it's very piecemeal, the system, but at least there's a little coverage.
Yeah.
So, but it's expensive. It's very costly. And unless you're very poor, and that means you'd have to have assets of less than $10,000, then you go on Medicaid. That would be healthcare for the poor. So it's very little bit for this group, a little bit for this group. And there is going to be a group that's kind of left out, and then they go on to that Obama administration care. So it just, it's always about just keeping you poor. It's crazy. It really is. Like, I don't know.
No, I'm with you. These are obscene charges.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They are.
Obscene.
I literally have to have a savings account. I have a separate savings account for various things, but I have a separate savings account for healthcare, additional healthcare costs. In addition to the insurance costs that just come right out of my paycheck. So
so we shouldn't really moan, because I have to say that the treatment that I received was second to none, and didn't pay for it.
They're very nice there. I've been to hospitals in UK for patients. My boyfriend's father, and they were so sweet. Every staff member was so kind and nice. Not that our staff members aren't nice here. Our nurses are very kind and were very good to my father. Very kind to my father. So I'm not going to argue with hospital staff. It's just the system that they're working under. That's all. And a lot of the system is to make certain people very rich here. It's the way it is. That's why and then, okay, I'll just tell you one thing against the elderly, what happened with the elderly. Okay. So and this is what I fought for the Trump administration. It's that conservative nonsense where we have to put you on private insurance and no government insurance. So our elderly insurance, called Medicaid, is a government insurance. Okay, I'm gonna lay this out. It's very logical. It's a government insurance. It's covered by the government. You pay that little bit. Then they started selling the elderly something called Medicare Advantage. Sounds great, right? Advantage. It's a private health care insurance for the elderly so we can get them off the government insurance. And let me tell you, if you're on that, oh, it's so cheap and I get to have free gym all the time and it's so great. Yeah, when you have a heart attack, you're going to the lousy hospitals and you're not going to get to go see your doctors. Okay? And I'm telling you, and if you do that, you're going to pay dearly for it. So it's such a scam on seniors. And then they realize they're on this. I didn't know it says Medicare. Yeah, Medicare Advantage. Mm-hmm. So the Trump administration allowed these companies to sell themselves for the elderly. It's such a scam. You know, elderly people, they don't often know.
But that's very Trump, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. No, I'm not going to say that there are positives with everything. But there's some things that I agree with Trump and some things I really don't agree with. You know, that's why I don't understand blind allegiance. Doesn't make any sense. So no, it's that extreme again. I'm going to go to this extreme, you know, and just ignore everything else that may be the truth.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the other side does that too.
Harry's constant refrain is, you know, politicians are not there to be liked. They're there to do a job. It's whether they do the job that matters. You know, they could be complete you-know-whats. But if they do the job and they make common sense decisions and things that help their constituents or whatever, that's all that matters.
They're going to end up with one term, right? Because they're going to make some unpopular decisions and the people who elected them will get upset. But that's the chance you take in politics. If you want to do something good for your country, that's the kind of politician I want, expecting a one term. If you want me again, fine, but I'm going to do the best that I can for you. And it may be something that you might not like.
Mm-hmm. Well, the classic example at the moment is Argentina, where you've got this new prime minister and he's saying, well, he's not just saying, he's cut civil service jobs, he's cut everything, all the deadwood, as he calls it. There's been riots and demos against him, but he's sticking to his guns.
Right.
And no pun intended, unless somebody assassinates him, he will do what he's promised to do.
Right. I guess turn things around.
Yes. Yeah, because their inflation rate is bizarre. It's like 300%.
Gosh.
There's actually a law in Argentina now to do with football fans, because football fans from other countries, Brazil, Uruguay, they taunt the Argentinians at the games by flashing peso notes. because they are, it's quite funny actually, but so the Argentinians have actually passed a law that if you do that in one of their football stadiums, you will be prosecuted. They take it that seriously.
Wow. Yeah, because it's a very sad situation. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, who would do that? I'm so stupid. Like, check yourselves, guys. How stupid are you? How egotistical and stupid can you be?
You should come to England and be a politician, Melissa. I'm convinced we'd elect you tomorrow, wouldn't we, Mark?
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to go now, at least briefly, Keith, because I've got to pick Jackie up from the station, okay? If I don't see you guys later, I'll see you next week.
Great, Phil.
Right,
see you next
good
week.
to see you, Phil.
Cheers, Phil.
Cheers. Hello.
Hello.
It's
just the dynamic trio.
It's interesting. It's interesting they started talking about inflation, because I was thinking about it this morning. Because, I'm kind of, I don't know if you noticed at all, I'm kind of a fighter.
Yeah.
And so
No,
I'm thinking, how am I going to, as an individual, fight inflation? I'm going to fight it. So I've started this program where anything I purchase, I really am thinking about it. And I'm questioning every vendor. Or I'm going, it was interesting, we have a bunch of different supermarket chains. And there were some of the prices on some of these, they're just outrageous. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to go here anymore. And I would go and I would complain to the managers.
Yeah.
And I make friends with them too. I have friends all in almost every store. And then I would go and buy a little here and a little there and a little there. But what I've noticed is some of the stores are starting to wake up because people aren't going there anymore because it's too expensive. And so they're putting out sales. So I started noticing these sale prices. I was like, bread for $1.99? Oh, yay. And then there's a little cheese over there for $4 for like, oh my God, that lasts me over 2 weeks. And then the milk is only $4. Wow. Because usually it's $6. So I've been doing a lot of comparison shopping.
It's good.
And I've also put myself on a crazy, I've actually when my son goes off to the Navy, I will, because I spend a lot on him. Anything I can do for him, I do. I don't watch my pennies with him.
Good mum.
Yeah, I don't watch my pennies with him. But with me, I'll watch my pennies. And I said, nope, you got a $50 a week food budget. $50 and that's it. What can you buy that's good for you? And it's a challenge. To me, it's a challenge. It's an exciting challenge, right? It's like, no, I'm going to beat those inflation numbers on food.
I agree with you. I retired in May, the end of April, and I get a private pension. I don't get my state pension for another 2 years. So I'm for the first time I thought, right, I'm just going to try. I got quite a nice big lump sum stuff, so I didn't want to tap into that. And I thought I'm going to try and live on what I get, which is about £1,500 a month, and that is paying a bit of the mortgage and paying various charges off and such like, and then living. And exactly what you said is exactly right. We've got 2 German outlets. I don't know whether you have them in the States, Aldi and Lidl.
We have Aldi, and we don't have Lidl. And when you finish, though, I'll tell you about another story about that. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So there is another store, which has always been the premier store outside Marks and Spencer's, called Waitrose. I go there.
Mark, I know your stores. I'm there a lot.
I'm there a lot. Waitrose looks like.
I love Waitrose. I love going to Waitrose with my boyfriend. I love that. Okay.
Well, they're saying that it actually might close because there are so few people now going to Waitrose because people are watching the pennies and they're going to. Wow. And what the other supermarkets are doing on the telly is Tesco, for example, benchmark on the adverts their products with Aldi. So you'll get an advert that will come on the TV for the sorts of things you talked about. And we've benchmarked it in Aldi, it's £1.26. And in Lidl, in Tesco, in Lidl, it's £1.16. And in Tesco, it's £1.02. And it's become competitive. But I just saw on the news a couple of weeks ago, because I used to go to Waitrose a lot.
Well, so this is interesting. I'll watch these things about. I'm interested in watching the greed at the top. I love watching greed at the top because it leads to a bust. It leads to a crash. Not that I want to crash. I just love to see the big guys crash. Because they're so stupid. And you're so stupid with your egotistical greed. Can't you control yourselves? Can't you do that? Can't you look inside your minds and control yourselves a little bit? Are you that wrapped up in nonsense? Yeah, they are. Anyway, so I'm watching a video on Bloomberg TV, our former competitor, Keith, on Morrison's.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what's going on with Morrison's presently, but the video was about how U.S. private equity firms are buying up High Street. Bed Bath & Beyond, not Bed Bath & Beyond, Body Shop, Morrison's. They come in. It's a weird deal. These bunch of billionaires come in, and they tell a company that's struggling, "Hey, we're going to come in, and we're going to buy your company. We're going to help you. We're going to help you." And so they buy it, but they put the debt on a company like Morrison's. It's your job to pay it. We're going to take this fee and that fee, and we're going to make your company run very smoothly, and you're going to do great. Never works out that way. It really doesn't work out that way, because they suck all the life out of the company. They take the fees, and they, and then the debt is left, and then they leave. Then they leave. You have no idea. And so they're buying up UK. Just to be careful, you guys got to be careful with the free market stuff. You got to be careful. You walk down High Street, and a lot of those stores are owned by U.S. private equity firms that don't care about you at all.
Actually, the sign of that is that quite often you'll see an empty store.
Yes.
And the question is, how can a company allow a store to remain empty? The fact is, it's part of a huge portfolio. They don't even know they've got it.
And and then a lot of them will get out of the deal.
Yeah.
They'll just dump it. It's terrible. Right. They did that to nursing homes here a few years ago. It's a lot of controversy because a lot of homes, they stripped them of staff. People died quickly in those homes because they didn't have staff to watch them. And then a lot of them closed down. So where does an elderly person go? Right? It's terrible what they do. And then they take all their fees, and they're all living the high life. This is what makes me sick. It's that other side of the pendulum. Like, come on. Do you have any, well, I guess you do have humanity because you're an idiot. But do you have any spiritual sense whatsoever besides your little monkey brain? Oh, I want more, I want more, I want more, I want more. Come on, guys.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
A little story, Melissa, and Mark's part of this story. There is a very historic hotel, apart from the one that's just been sold, called Shelley's. And it's about 400 years old, a very posh hotel. And it closed during lockdown and was bought by a slum landlord, and it's sitting rotting on Lewis High Street. And we are trying to persuade a pub chain to get involved with Mirador and have television stations in its pubs, and to make this hotel its key pub television operation because it's ideal for it.
Wonderful.
So it could be that we're going to be a story in the opposite direction.
Oh, very good.
Now,
very good.
Now, Mark, God bless him, he knows the owner of this pub chain, and that's not always a key to them necessarily going along with you. But he's trying his heart out. What a wonderful story if we can pull that off.
That sounds great. That sounds wonderful.
It'll be cute. Yeah, I know. I went to university with in my final year. I shared a house with two people, one called Tim and one called Jim. They were both doing economics, and I was doing biology. Tim's dad died that year, and Tim said, "I'm going to buy a pub in a place called Ancoats near Manchester." And we said, "Oh, you're mad." He said, No. He said, I'm going to sell beer at half price. I'm going to sell gin, whiskey, vodka, half price. And so I guarantee I'll draw all the students into the bar, and it'll be popular. And that's exactly what he did do. And he now owns 860 pubs in England.
Wow, that's so great.
His name's Tim Martin, and he's
right. I had looked him up when I was
Wetherspoons. Yeah,
Wetherspoons. Yes. I'd like to actually visit Wetherspoons. I know
you need to when you come over next time, Melissa. The one thing you need to do is go into a Spoons, because you can get. I always say, I quote this little example. I drink red wine. I get a glass of Merlot, a large glass of Merlot, 250 ml glass of Merlot, in Spoons, £3.20. This house said I am £3.20. I went to Euston Station a couple of months ago and went for the same wine, Merlot, same volume, £19. Yes, and they're fish and chips.
Actually, one thing I forgot to mention to you, Mark, is if you can persuade Tim to buy Shelley's, is he will buy a ghost.
Ooh,
Ghost.
I like that.
Even
That's
better.
great. Oh, you might find that fun.
Well, as it happens, Keith, I'm hopefully going to see him in a couple of weeks' time. He's been away in the States. He's back now, and he said he's coming up to Manchester in the next couple of weeks. So I said, because I'm free, I said, you just tell me when and where, and I'll be there. So I'll get up to meet. I was just going to say the other thing going away from this, Melissa, is that I also decided that when I retired, I wouldn't buy any new clothes. I'd buy all my clothes from charity shops. And you can get, so this is a really nice Lambretto t-shirt that I bought from Douglas Macmillan, which is cancer research shop.
Oh, nice. Nice.
For a pound.
Wow.
For a pound. And it
That's
must be in the
great.
shop. And it's nearly new.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I bought a red Ralph Lauren t-shirt, which most probably is something ridiculous in the shops for £2.
Wow,
So
that's great.
It's the charity shops.
I buy my clothes off eBay, not necessarily because of the price, but I'm totally out of fashion. I wear tweeds and
Very nice, Keith.
stuff that was worn 75 years ago, and that's the only place you can buy it.
No, it is.
Well, it's interesting
going back
because, clothing is. It's interesting with clothing too. I've made the decision. I'm not going to buy clothes or shoes online. I'm not going to do it. I can't really see what I'm going to look like. And honestly, I'd like to go back to sewing my own clothes. Now, clearly, I'm not going to sew my own jackets and things like that. So I'd have to go out and source it, figure out what to do with that. But I would like to, I want to reward merchants who are fair. So, and I often told this to my son, I could have $100 million. If you're out there and you're trying to charge me $6 for a loaf of bread, you're hurting the poor. You're hurting them. And I'm not going to support you at that.
Yeah.
Now, that might sound like I'm being cheap. I said, no, I just don't think you should not be doing that. It's wrong. So, yeah, it doesn't matter how much money I have. I don't care. I'm just not going to, I don't like rewarding people who are really greedy and they just don't think about their human beings, their fellow humans. I can't. Just can't do it.
No,
but actually, it's very difficult, isn't it, when we're in a culture of football, for instance, that pay $50,000 a week. And then the next season, the same player comes and tries to negotiate an extra $20,000 a week on his pay packet. What the hell's he going to do with it? And yet, you say to a fan, "Don't go and watch that football match."
Yeah, it really is about, so if all of a sudden they're being charged so much more, see, that's where it's not fair. It's not right. So we have to all kind of exercise our sovereignty and say, I'm not going to support this. I don't even care. See, a lot of times, okay, I'm just going to take football as an example. There are numerous examples. One of the reasons why we do things is to distract ourselves from our miserable lives. Let's be honest here. A lot of us have lives that feel bad. And so we'll do things to distract ourselves. But here's the lovely secret. It doesn't have to be miserable. It doesn't. It's believe me, I'll make myself miserable too. But it's not something that's outside that's doing it.
Yeah.
Let's think about this for a moment. It's not something outside, like if somebody yells at me, for example. Let's say somebody yells at me at work.
Now we've got a living example of Mirador's philosophy of blending in with life. Because
Yeah,
we've got
someone's sweeping up behind you.
the cleaner here. Come and say hello, Luna. Where are you?
She's busy. She's busy
Busy,
doing
so
her
they want to
job.
open up. They want to chuck you out. They want to open up and get the
Perhaps
beer
you can
flowing.
see him, I can't. He's making such a noise. He can't.
He's sweeping.
Can't do it.
Yeah, he's doing his job, which is good. It's just great.
But
He's ready to open, look.
Yeah, he's
behind
getting
you.
ready to open.
Yeah, he's got his vacuum cleaner, Keith. He's giving it a good do once you don't get tripped over that wire.
Come and say hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Here's
Hello.
here's
How are you?
our new cleaner. Yeah.
Hello.
I told him everything he knew.
This is Melissa,
Good.
Hi.
and this is Mark,
Oh yeah.
and I'm.
Hi, mate.
That's us. Yeah. Yes, we do good, right?
There's see, our policy is to be part of life.
Yeah, that's it. You are.
Since you're busy doing your thing,
That's it. You're the backbone
we're
of
part
life.
of your life.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll let you get on with it.
All right.
That's
Keith's
it.
not had his pint yet. You've not, Keith. Have you had your first pint yet?
Is one.
Have you had your first pint yet? Have you had a pint of beer yet?
No, but I actually left when I left you about half an hour ago. It was to open up the door to let the drayman bring in some barrels of beer. So
Can't be better. Can't be
it's
better.
it's absolutely total madness. But whenever I tell people, what we're about and how we have all this going on around, they say, "Oh, that's exciting! Oh, that's interesting." I don't know why somebody hasn't tried it before.
Right. Yeah. Right.
No one's as
exactly.
mad as you, Keith. That's why.
But I mean, it's you're right, because somebody like Deck, who is really is a publican, but as our chief of staff, is a humanitarian. He is just a lovely, lovely man. And when I broke down on the Red Devil a couple of weeks ago, he took half his staff. He virtually closed the pub to come and rescue me.
Wow. Yeah. See. Yeah.
That's the sort of man that he is. But is when the prices went up about 2 months ago now, and he sat, and because he's a tenant landlord and he doesn't own the pub, he sat and tried to figure out how he could keep the prices down, because he said these are going up far too much. It's beyond the average man, and it's the average man that this pub is geared towards.
Yeah.
And the people sitting up in the boardroom of Big Hurley don't give a fee. But
It's so funny, Keith. I'm the one that's sitting in the boardroom with them.
yes.
I manage them, so I
Well,
go
you
to
said
many boards, many boards, and I listen. I love these guys. I do. I love them all. I love I love the billionaires. I love the millionaires. I love them all. I do. I know I'm starting to sound like Donald Trump. I apologize. But sometimes their policies are absurd. And don't think that I don't take them aside and tell them that. And then they scratch their heads. They're like, oh, yeah, maybe she's right. But then they go back to that nonsense, right? I said, well, you went back to the nonsense. If you want to really put clients first, right, then do it. Stop just saying it. You're not putting clients first. Come on already. So it's sometimes it's important for us to speak up. It's important for us to act. You know, like here's a great example. I mean, investments. You know what would be a very easy investment for me? Would be our US Treasuries. Okay? Very easy investment for me to sock a bunch of money in there and just get nearly 5% guaranteed for 10 years. Sounds great, right? I don't want my country going into debt. I don't want to encourage it. I don't.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have bonds. I don't. People look at me like, no. I only invest in companies, my economy. That's all. Or I'll go to the banks and have them pay me the 5%. I don't care.
That's the way.
I don't care about that.
Governments thrive on debt, and as long as that's part of our culture, it's going to be very difficult to do away with it.
That's why, you know, you do what like Mark is doing, like what I'm doing, what they did at the pub, is you say no. No,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to do what I normally do anymore. I'm not going to be part of the herd. I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need it. I don't. Most of the stuff we buy, we don't need. We're buying it as a distraction.
Yeah, definitely.
Why
true.
are we distracting ourselves? Why?
Definitely
Ask
true.
yourselves that. What's going on in our minds that we're distracting ourselves? Fix that. Fix the mind. Really?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But listen, being part of us is you're not part of the herd.
Definitely not.
Now I can fall into it sometimes. Don't make no mistake. And then I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? Anyway.
So what's the weather like, Melissa? Back to nitty-gritty. What's the weather like in your part of the world?
Well, I'm going to show you this right here, which is really breaking my heart. See that box over there in the window?
Oh yeah.
That's an air conditioning unit, and I don't want to put it in because it blocks my view.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, I would say it's probably like almost 40 degrees Celsius in this apartment, because I'm up on the 6th floor. I'm at the top floor. The roof is black, right?
Yeah,
and
wow.
the building is made of brick. So it's a big, huge oven,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
it's a big
great.
oven.
It's great in the winter.
Yeah.
Never, ever am I ever cold in the winter. But
Well,
let me
I-
tell you, in the summer,
Today's,
melting.
I don't know what it's like where Keith is, but down in Lewis, but here, one of the first days I've got a t-shirt on and the weather's nice, but it's still only 18 degrees. And
Yeah, it's 20 in Lewis, but
yeah,
you know, you're double what we are.
See, you know what's funny? Is in the winter I can bundle up, right? And then
Yeah.
I'm fine. What do you do in the summer?
yeah,
Straight take your skin off? I mean, what do you do? You know? So I've had to break down and put the darn thing in the window, which of course, you know, I don't support the utilities overcharging people either,
No.
including myself. So anyway,
Right. But listen, let's just so people have been focused on our own election. So we think that politics is only taking place in the United Kingdom. But of course, you've got an election in September. Is it September, November?
November.
And you've got two equally controversial people. What's the status there on your political scene?
Well, I mean, the polls, which, you know, listen to the polls because they're usually wrong. But what we do is we'll take the polls from the past and we'll say, okay, they were wrong by 10%. You know, why don't you be right? It's hard because people change their minds all the time. So it's very hard to poll anybody. But you're looking at really kind of neck and neck going into this race. So it really is anybody's guess. I know Biden is trying to do things to make up for his deficiencies of the past 4 years. But he's not really doing enough. And there are some issues here. Yeah, the economy, yes. You're going to try to convince American people that everything's great. That's hilarious. Inflation's only 2%. Yeah, well, they take out what do they call it? I forgot what they call it. Food and energy, which is huge. Oh, we take that out. Why? Because it's volatile. Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
But they are essential. So why are you taking them out of that ridiculous consumer price index? Why? Because you're liars. That's why. Because you're liars. I always hated that. The volatile food, not including the volatile food and energy sectors. Why not? Why are you not including them? Remember back in the days with Morning Business Report, Keith?
Yeah.
Every time I would read that, I'd be like, why? Why don't you tell us the truth? Huh? Tell us the truth. So anyway, but then I would talk to an economist. They'll be like, really? But anyway, yeah. So
Good stuff.
yeah, interesting. Very interesting. So it's very hot here, just to sum that
Yeah,
all up.
sounds it. Yeah.
But anyway.
It's hot here. To be quite honest with you, I don't follow the polls that much either, because they've been notoriously wrong in the past. But I wonder whether, in fact, we're all going to get one hell of a shock, and that Nigel Farage is on a surge of popularity, is suddenly going to be a serious contender. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think
I think you're right.
it's scarily going to happen, because he's going up and up and up, and he's saying all the sorts of outrageous things that Trump used to say about migration.
Yeah, he's like he's your Trump.
Yeah,
and he of course promotes Trump. He'll be over in September promoting Trump. So they're like that. So I agree with Keith. He's a dark horse, but he could come up on the.
Tell me what it is. Tell me what it is that he says that you don't like. Because I'm going to be honest. I don't know a whole lot about him. I know he's kind of clownish like Trump. That's really kind of all I know. So I'm a bit ignorant. I know what Trump stands for. I know what his plans are, but I don't know Nigel Farage's plans for UK. What would that be?
We had his Reform Party candidate on the other day, and to be quite honest with you, Philip sent the link to Harry for him to have a look at, because Harry is a Farage supporter, because Harry argues that the parliamentary party of the Conservatives aren't Conservatives at all. And that Farage is actually now speaking Conservative speak. So this guy actually made a lot of sense. And to be quite honest with you, what I think he said that appealed to me is that all the political parties say all sorts of things which don't mean anything. And as a consequence, nobody knows what the hell's happening, and in fact, that's where we are right now. Yeah.
Right. So, are there certain issues that he really talks about? Because, I really like to get to the heart of it. So, if I elect you, what are you going to do that's going to impact my country and me? Right.
Yes.
I don't know. I know very specifically about my country, but when you say conservative, here you're talking about a moderate Democrat.
You're talking about
a moderate Democrat. Your conservatives.
Our conservatives are, yes. The unfortunate thing is that the terms have got lost. For instance, the Guardian newspaper says that being a conservative is outrageously right.
Yeah, they'll do those extremes like we talked about. Yeah. So what is a conservative extreme? I don't know. In your country, what would that be?
Well, I don't think that we've had conservative extremes for a long time. I think that the conservative extremes went out with I'm trying to remember the Rivers of Blood guy. Who's the Rivers of Blood guy, Mark?
I can't think.
That is Enoch Powell. Enoch Powell, who was an extreme conservative. The funny thing is that quite often the extremes accidentally get things right. Enoch Powell, 40 years ago, said we mustn't. He was anti-coloured immigration. And he said, if we let this go on, first of all, we'll be fighting in the streets. But then our society will start to break down, etc., etc. And as somebody said the other day, he said, Enoch Powell, come back, all is forgiven.
So what does that mean, colored immigration?
Well, means anybody who's not white.
But don't the whites cause problems and fights?
More problems.
They never cause a fight.
Yeah. What?
I see them all the time at the football matches causing fights.
Mm.
But that's okay.
No, it's not okay. What I'm saying is that society successfully hides various things. For instance, Albanian immigration isn't racist. It's gangs. They do the same thing, but they're gangs, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the liberals don't get upset about it.
Well, what's interesting about immigration and what I believe with immigration is if you want to come into a country, you need to show you deserve to come into that country and that you're respectful. And that's going to take some time to vet you. We're not just going to take you all in, right? So, black, white, green, whatever you are, you should go through a process, right? Not just be allowed in. So,
well, I mean, as you well know, and I'm very proud that Mirador has no isms. I look at, I'm a meritocrat, really. I look for people who know what they're doing and what they're saying. That to me is the important thing.
Right.
But there are a lot of people in this country who sneer at being a meritocrat, and that's why we get this. We were discussing before you joined us. Probably the meltdown from the Conservatives is because they had ratios. We must have a black candidate in this riding. We must have a gay candidate in this riding.
Right.
We must have a woman in this riding.
Yeah.
Are they any good? Oh, no, that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's not the answer.
There. No, we're not going to have him.
That's not the answer, right? We know that's not the right answer. The right answer is we have a white male candidate. We have a woman candidate here. She's clearly better. Don't take him.
That's right.
But we still take him. That's where the breakdown occurs and creates that kind of nonsense where we have a white candidate, male, and a woman, and she stinks, and he's better, but we're going to give it to her. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why.
But
so we have to justify what our decisions are, especially the big decisions, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And we have to hold these people, male, gay, whatever, accountable for their actions in office. Absolutely. Or in business or in a job, right? Just like everybody else is held accountable. So it can't be about what you look like. It's got to be about how are you doing? So, I understand because that's once again, that's the pendulum on this side. Yeah, and I understand what's going on with your immigration because we have a lot of that too. The one thing that scares me a little bit, our immigrants coming in, as crazy as they are, at least religions can also bring about extremes. But I would prefer a religion based on love and peace rather than a law where And I maybe a Muslim out there can, tell me something different, but your extremes are scary.
Yeah.
They're frightening. They're old school, like centuries old. Please stop it. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk around with something over my head because what, you're trying to protect me, or I can't own property because I'm a woman. Why? Because a man's got to protect me. Why? But see, that's very many centuries ago thinking. So you
Yes.
gotta, and I don't think they're gonna come to our century. So that's the kind of immigration you have. You all have got to be very careful.
Yes, I think actually, in a broader sense, if I can make a sort of analogy, is if I want to emigrate to the United States, I have to go through hoops, and the chances are I won't make it, even though I would be a good citizen, make a good contribution to society, etc., etc. But by the same token, I'm faced with people who say, "Oh well, you've got to let these Mexicans in because they're underprivileged people."
Yeah, that we well, first of all, my country's broke. We can't afford it. I'm going to be very honest with you. We're broke. We have an incredible deficit, and a lot of our national spending is going to pay the debt. 16% going to pay the debt. 16% of our national spending.
Yeah,
and it's rising like crazy because we're going to spend our way and indebt our way into prosperity. What? I can't even. Don't even get me started with that nonsense. But yeah, we can't afford it. I'm sorry. We can't. Go make your own countries great. That's it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you can't come in here and start committing crimes. We have so many crimes. It's insane. Like rapes and murders. Please stop. Stop it. I know you're poor. I know you're upset. I'm sorry. We can't always help everybody. We can't. We're bleeding. We're a sinking ship. We're a sinking ship. We can't help everybody. So yeah, I understand.
It's the soft underbelly of democracy, really. Is that politicians try to please everybody all the time, which can't be done.
No, it can't. Yeah. Unfortunately, it just really can't be done. But yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, it's people who would, maybe a Mexican who wants to go through the system legally. I know it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of persistence, but those are the kinds of immigrants we want.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
So if you want to come, go through the process. If I want to go and be a citizen of UK, I don't want to just go over there and say, hey, I'll end up with a one-way ticket to Rwanda. Okay. So, I'd have to go through a very long process, correct? Probably 10, 15 years it might take me. But if this is something I really want because I really love the UK, then it's something I'm going to do, right? Not just because you're going to give me a handout, because I don't need your handout. I want to be a contributing citizen of the UK, right? That's what we want.
Well, that term is used in British immigration as an economic immigrant. In other words, things ain't so good in my country, so I'll come to yours.
Right, and then I'm going to expect that you're going to give me all of the things that I need.
Yeah.
Are you serious? But there's citizens in your country that don't even have what they need. You're just going to neglect them? You neglect them? Yeah. It's one of the things that's going to turn our election around here in the United States. Yep.
Well, I mean, it's similar to you saying that some of the hotels on your way to work are being given over to, quote, immigrants.
Yeah. So it's just not, first of all, they're not going to pay the taxes that are needed to keep the city running. They have pizza delivery jobs. They're not going to, even if they're paying taxes and they're, you give them a residency, they still are not going to pay the tax base. You need people with lots of money to do that, who've been here a long time, right? So there's, listen, you want to be compassionate. I understand that we want to all be compassionate. But there's going to be a point where you're going to come to my country. You're just going to waltz through. Maybe you've got some ISIS ties. Now they're worried about that because we have a very porous border. So any terrorist can come in, right? And all of a sudden now we've got some Russian style. Let's just bomb Madison Square Garden where they have concerts, right? And kill hundreds and hundreds of people because you're mad. So we have to be but we don't do that. We just, anybody's coming through.
No, we don't. And because I say, as indeed you just articulated, if you want to come in, there's a price to pay.
Yes.
A lot of the liberal approach to immigration is, oh gosh, you're weird, wanting, you don't care, you're not compassionate. I am, but I see no reason for watering down what we're having difficulty providing at the moment, just because I need to be compassionate.
Yeah, I just think that, well, in our country, we have deficits, we have problems, we have a lot of debt. And so when you come to my country and you want a $10,000 prepaid debit card, which is what we're giving everybody, we don't have the money for that. We're taking it out of schools. We're taking it out of libraries. We're taking it out of the arts. We're taking it out of the police. We're taking it out of the fire. This is what makes New York great, is those things. And you're taking the money out of those pots to give it to somebody who's in the streets with the mopeds, delivering pizzas, or maybe not just delivering pizzas. Maybe they're doing something else. So come on. So you're sitting there with an iPhone and designer sneakers, and I can't even afford that.
Yes, that's right. It's mandatory that you're given a phone.
And, no, but it has to be an iPhone because you give them $10,000. They're given $10,000 prepaid debit cards. So what are they going to do with it? They're going to buy a moped, they're going to buy sneakers, and they're going to buy an iPhone. Those are status things, right? So that's what they're going to do with it. They're not going to go put it in a savings account, right?
Melissa, we've ended this morning's session in a very feisty manner. It's been a wonderful session, as usual. Thank you for joining us. I will send you a little note, as you requested last week. Now that I've got a little bit more time, hopefully. But we look forward to seeing you next week.
Very good. All right, Keith, you take care.
Excellent.
Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Well, there we are. The Jamboree did very well this morning. We ranged over a whole host of things, from the NHS down to Donald Trump and what he stands for. So I'll be back on Monday morning. Until then, this is Keith Hayes. This is Mirador Television. This is the Black Horse Pub, in which you can go to the quiz every second Sunday, except for July, when it'll be the third Sunday because of Euros. You can watch the football, and you can get a bloody good Sunday lunch.
And a good cleaner too.
And a good cleaner who's joined the team and who's joined into the spirit of the thing, because he spent more time this morning broadcasting than he did cleaning. Toodle pip.